Hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting. As you can see, we went from 5 chairs down to 3. So unfortunately, we have no Smiv from Palmers FC today, and Sean has, for some reason, decided to go on an Adidas shoot with Paul Pogba instead of coming here. So what can we do?
Unbelievable.
But we do have Matt Wilson from Ball Street on the end, and Will Pyne from Brave Bison, who we're definitely going to get through a huge amount today as we talk about kind of influencer marketing, what it is, where it's going, the pros, the cons. There's a huge amount to cover, and having just talked to both of these behind the stage, we'll have no danger of filling that next 45 minutes at all. So first of all, I just wanted to cover kind of very top line, how you best describe influencer marketing to start there, get the conversation going, and what does it take to become an influencer as well?
Shall I go first? So I think, influencer marketing, Christ, what an overused word these days, for starters.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? I think effectively brands struggle to have a legitimate voice, an authentic, relatable voice when it comes to their audiences, certainly younger audiences, and I think influencers are effectively like a voice proxy, I guess, aren't they? It's a way of brands talking, communicating to their audiences in a way that is more relatable and in a way that their audience understands via people that they respect, probably more, sometimes more than the big corporate brand.
I think that it's about being relatable. That's the key thing. So to be influential, to be an influencer, you have to have the power to influence someone. And there's lots of people that do that in lots and lots of different fields. Traditionally, I guess in sport, it was athletes, it was people like that you choose to be an ambassador. But what really happened is there were a few macro trends with, I guess, technology that sort of really changed the monopoly that people had on content production and the monopoly that was on distribution. So now, a young kid can sit here and just talk about his favorite subject, be that computer games, be that football, be that whatever, and build an audience based on applying certain principles like consistency. And once you start to have an audience, then you're an influencer within that sphere or that subject matter.
And brands are basically, in terms of influencer marketing, it's piggybacking almost on those audiences, isn't it? And when you're looking for an influencer for the network or for a campaign, what do you look for in them? What makes someone stand out from... Because, any of us could upload something up to the internet, and are we an influencer, are we not? What makes a good influencer?
I mean, it's in many ways, it's like looking for talent in traditional ways, You're looking for someone who... first and foremost, you need to identify your audience, don't you? If you the message that your brand is looking to put out there, you need to know who your audience is and what your message is, and then you need to find the appropriate voice to carry that message. And it's about finding someone who has, a kind of a similar understanding or a similar outlook. There's no point picking someone that just is like chalk and cheese with your brand. So I think it's about understanding your audience and therefore understanding who the right person is to actually put that message across.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just to build on what you're saying, I think it's really about understanding what your outcome is, like what your aim is, and reverse engineering that. Because if you want to make if you're wanting to make content on, for example, YouTube, then you shouldn't be using a professional athlete that's got that people don't connect with on YouTube, that's got no YouTube presence. So it depends what your outcomes are, and then you've got to build a map to reach that kind of to reach that goal. So if you want to do something on YouTube, you need to use people that are relatable to a YouTube audience. So you're going to have more success with someone like KSI or somebody like Arsenal Fan TV than you are going to do if you just take, I don't know, even Pogba and put him on YouTube.
Yeah, because part of understanding your audience is understanding where they live, right?
Yeah, and what they relate to.
What they relate to.
Absolutely.
I mean, with the campaigns, you mentioned KSI when I was at COP90, we discussed this earlier. I mean, is this how you work with someone over a period of time? Because one of the things is, do you work with someone on a one-off and get hit and then go, oh, that was successful? Or when I was at COP, when I joined, there were 30,000 subscribers, and did a campaign with KSI, which basically sent him out to Champions League games where he played someone local at FIFA and then went to the game. And this is the kind of influence that these people have. We went from 30,000 to 300,000 subscribers in 3 months, which, on the top of it looks amazing, but you need to carry on working with these people as well.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise you're borrowing an audience, effectively. If you use a creator for a short period of time, you are borrowing their audience for a limited time. And invariably, if you get a massive uplift in your YouTube subscribers, for example, by using a KSI for 6 months, and then KSI does one to do one of his many other things that he's involved in, then there's every chance that those people that have followed you as a result will then also unfollow you because he's not on the platform.
Or you end up with, fine, your subs is up here, but the views that you're getting is a small fraction of that audience. So I was talking to a big YouTuber yesterday, and he was saying the subscribers isn't what he looks at. He looks at views. And he gets more views than he gets subscribers because people are interested in that content. Now, he's a football fan channel, so other fans of other teams aren't probably going to subscribe to his channel because they'd feel, as a Manchester United fan subscribing to an Arsenal channel, you wouldn't want to do that. But what you would want to do is you might want to watch that content because it's about a subject matter that you do care about. So I think that the whole thing is very nuanced because you could look at Copper 90 and you could go, wow, look at all those subs, but actually the views they're getting their engagement rate overall is a fraction of what some other channels are. So I think you have to understand, and it's challenging, right? Because I set up a business in this space in 2012. I know from Will set up and sold a business called Hollow, which are amazing at communicating in this space. We've been in it for ages, and it's still confusing. You still need to know all these different things. So I think for football clubs and for brands who have got to worry about all this stuff, for them to understand some of these nuances, I think it is challenging. I think that's why people make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, using creators over a longer period of time definitely pays off.
Yeah.
There's a couple of examples on Slash Football, which is one of our channels that Brave Bison owns. There's a format called Park Life, and it features... Actually features KSI at times, but not officially. It features Manny more officially, as in he's contracted to appear on the format. It's a weekly grassroots football sort of documentary, if you like. And the numbers over the course of last season ramped up and up and up as you went through the season. Anything from 100K to 500,000 views per episode. The subscribers on that particular channel aren't huge, but to your point, the viewing numbers are really huge, are really, really big versus the subscribers. And it pays to use creators over a longer period of time. And we're renewing with the same guys to do the same format because there's an audience ready to watch.
And it's just to, again, sort of build on that. I think that because influencer marketing is still a new term or a newish term, so some people, it worries them a little bit. But it's ultimately no different towards partnership or sponsorship, broadcast sponsorship. If you work with someone on a one-off basis, guess what? You're going to get some gratification from it, but you're not going to get the kind of results that you get from cultivating a real long, deep, meaningful partnership. Because any audience that sees a brand turn up and do one thing once, fine, great, but then you move on and it's something else that's taking your attention. But if you're constantly having a relationship with the right people, with the right influencers, that's when you can actually build something truly meaningful.
I mean, Red Bull are the perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Red Bull are synonymous with influencer marketing, and they do it brilliantly, and they've done it longer than anyone else. They still use and they still work with people like Danny McCaskill, who's the BMX, the BMX dude. They still work with him. This is 10, 15 years on.
Yeah.
The guy has physically aged since they, since they started using him. And they have long-term relationships, and they don't even have to have successes initially. They choose to work with someone because they're right for the brand, and they stick with it year after year after year.
Does it depend on what you want to get out of it as well? Because if you want to get some app downloads, then is it successful? Then if you do a one-off influencer campaign, you get a load of downloads to your app, bang, done. Was that success?
I mean, that's the thing. I've seen some people doing this, and they get a load of influencers to talk about something at the same time, and it creates a spike, and you might get downloads of an app, especially if you incentivize them with tickets or something like that they know people want. But what you get is a load of app downloads, and the influencers that have sent people there, they're not using the app. They're still going back and using Instagram and using Twitter, and that's where their conversation are. So people aren't stupid. If they go to this app and download it and then they're not seeing posts and updates and anything from the person that's told them to sign up with, then they know it's hollow. So they'll get what they want, which might be they win the tickets, but then they too are going to go back to their regular behavior, which is to spend time in other areas. So it really does depend on what your true objectives are. And app downloads is one thing, but actually what you probably want to do is you want for your audience to be spending time on that app and using it repeatedly. Otherwise, you've just got a nice story that you can't then sustain, and then you're going to get pressure from your shareholders if that's the business that you're in.
And the interesting thing for me is, what about from the side of the influencer? Right? If you're a creator,
exactly.
whatever you want to call them, influencer creator, and you end up, and there's been a big backlash actually this week. The mummy bloggers that have been. There's some well-known mummy bloggers that have been taken apart in like the Daily Mail, for example, for just doing brand after brand after brand every single day. And people are starting to think, hang on a minute, why is that brand synonymous with you? You're clearly just being paid to talk about the brand. So
for them, is it a fine line that they've got to tread?
Absolutely.
If you're talking like Robbie, for example, was yesterday.
Because they will just become synonymous with no one brand, and people won't really respect what they say necessarily. Whereas if you stick with a brand over a long period of time, people will start to understand that actually you genuinely doing this not for the love of it, but you have some common ground with that brand, and you're doing it for a reason other than just getting paid.
Absolutely.
So I think
it's
that's really
like
important.
if you're one day going, God, I love Harrogate spring water, it's the best. And then the day after you're going, God, this Evian water really makes me feel more hydrated.
We're videoing this is great. Sharing this.
But that's what it's like. And what we've tried to do, and again, I think that, so my background, I was at TalkSport, I was in charge of sponsorship, I was in charge of the whole commercial for TalkSport and Sport Magazine. And so I spent a lot of time working with brands and embedding them into an editorial context, essentially. So what we learn, and by doing that, is having these real kind of all-in partnerships with certain brands in certain categories with certain IP is what gets long-term results. And that's why a lot of the brands that I worked with back in 2003, like Ford, like Paddy Power, like EA Sports, they've stayed with the station year in, year out. And we've tried to replicate that with what we've done with the Ball Street Network. So Ball Street, we own a lot of social media channels and pages, but we also represent and own some fan media pages. So what we try and do, we look at it almost like an airport. So T5 is fan channels, for example. Now that's owned by BA. So we don't work with BA, we work with Ladbrokes, that's our BA. So Ladbrokes own all the fan channel real estate. And it's so much better for the channels, because if they were just jumping on and talking about a different brand every week, the audience starts to just think, you're just getting paid. But because Ladbrokes are there, and the way that we run the editorial, it's about being backed for the season. We don't even go in there going, bet now, bet now. We don't even talk about odds, really. Is because what we're doing is, and what Ladbrokes have been smart enough to do, is to realize that the reward in social media is not instant gratification of downloads or sign-ups, but the actual reward is about building a consistent and very close relationship with that audience, so that down the line, when they actually do want to make a bet, where else are you going to go? You're going to be loyal to the guys and to the brands that you've been that are interested in the same stuff as you. So the actual reward in social media, the ROI, is delayed gratification, not instant gratification.
Not to forget the fact that a creator will end up looking more, frankly, real and authentic, and like they have a genuine affinity with a brand if it's over a longer period of time, as opposed to just being paid for a one-off you and your Harrogate water ad that you just did.
Exactly, and I think that's it is a challenge, because a lot of influencers that are getting discovered and that are starting to do something well, they've probably got to where they are because they're not spending all their days at work. They're passionate about something, so they're talking about it and they're making that their priority. So when you actually get the opportunity to earn from that, you're delighted, and naturally you're going to be interested in taking that money. And I think that's where this is quite a new boom industry, where there's people have seen success, it's getting spoken about. So you get everybody jumping on and going, hey, I'm an influencer marketing agency. Hey, I'm an influencer marketing expert because I know a guy. And they're not. And actually a lot of people are interested in taking value out of the game rather than making value by giving people good advice and building these long-term relationships. So if anybody in here is thinking about jumping in and doing stuff, you've got to try and be careful and work with people that actually know what they're doing and are thinking long-term rather than just trying to get a transaction to happen, because cha-ching, that's how you
need a strategy. as opposed to it's old school comms principles, right? You need a strategy, not just I want that shiny new thing over there.
Yeah.
But how do you work with? Is there a certain education that needs to happen with the brands as well? Because I still work on things, and it's like, right, our metric is we need to hit X number of video views. Bang, that's it. That is our entire metric. We don't really understand the space, but we need to hit these views. That's our metric. How do you educate? How do you work with the brand to say, right, don't do this approach that you're thinking of that's really short term and doesn't really work. We want to work with you over a longer basis.
I mean, you get that across the board, right? Brands will ring up and say, "Give me a viral video." What do you mean by a viral video? That's how long's a piece of string. You get it with brands saying, "I want to do something on Snapchat because I've read that it's the new thing to do."
Yeah.
So nothing really has ever changed, and it will always be a case of, educating and as experts trying to sort of talk to brands about why are you using that platform? Why are you doing that kind of execution? Why do you want to work with that creator? What's the strategy behind it, as opposed to just let's do an execution of something?
Yeah, and it's remarkable how people often don't have the answer to that question, why. And I think that you've got to then look at what's driving the organization or the individual. And I think that one of the truths that we don't really talk about is that a lot of times when people are looking to spend money or to activate an asset, they're not necessarily doing it to get the best result or even in sight of what the grand long-term objectives of the business are. They're doing it because it makes them look good, or they've got the way that they're judged is on metrics of the past, and that's why they're not even going into this space. Yeah. That's why they're chasing traditional media, because the actual measurable things that relate to their appraisal processes or whatever that internal structure is, they're things of the past. So they just want to move them forward because that's how they get that pay rise. So I think that. And I'm not being critical here. We're evolving, right? We're all doing it together, and I think that's why forums like this are actually good, because you can kind of talk about it and share these experiences. Yeah,
it's tough. I mean, a couple of years ago, we did an experiment. It was with a big FMCG one, and basically the first few months they did working with influencers. This is around YouTube videos.
Right.
Did some great videos. It was all kind of over a period of time, and then the following few months went back to doing straight TV adverts on them with paid media behind it, and then weighed up, and guess which one they went with? The second one. Because it ticked all the right boxes. And sometimes the bigger the brands, that harder the conversation is, because they're just ticking boxes.
It's also that, let's not lie as well, a lot of money is caught up in legacy trading relationships. Yeah. So the middlemen are incentivized in order to put budget in certain directions as well. So I think that there's this industry, still, even in media, even in internet or digital, it's still really in the very formative stages, and it is a long game, So I think that there's a lot of education required across the board.
I think it's healthy, isn't it, when something ceases to become the new shiny thing. It's actually, it bottoms out, doesn't it? It nets out, and people start to be more considered about why they're using it.
Can we give an example of like a good campaign? We talked about, what potentially you should be doing. Can you give an example of one that you've either worked on or you've seen that you think that's how it should be done? And also maybe give an example of one that hasn't gone so well. Do you think you wish you'd been able to do this, but you can't? Probably can't name who it is. But
difficult one.
Some of the traumas that you kind of deal with at the same time.
All right, I've got two I can go with right now. So I actually did a video on this, which is going on LinkedIn today. I've started doing LinkedIn videos. I think that's a smart thing to do, by the way, and if you want to know why, we can talk about that later. But it was on Coral and the True Geordie. Does anyone know the True Geordie? You know who that is? Yeah?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. You will do. So the True Geordie is an influencer, and Coral have joined up the season to enable him to make content around the things that he likes. And one of those the other day was on the Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather live stream. It was essentially a watch-along, like a live goggle box. And because he was doing this, and he's got a sizable audience and a very engaged podcast, This got 16 million views on that night. 16 million views. So huge. Now, I think there was a little bit of misattribution because, as we know, in this 2017, there's a lot of people that are looking for illegal streams. So I think that it wasn't all a genuine audience. However, 16 million views is huge. And there was a lot of natural engagement, a concurrent peak of about 220,000. That's what's good about that.
Was the title something to do with that, right? Because it was
a little bit, yeah.
Mayweather-McGregor live stream. You're going to get a lot of views. I mean, and this is one of the. Sorry, just to interject. This is one of the weird things about YouTube, for example, is that so much can rest on a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Or a title of a video. The content could be, and I'm not casting any aspersions about that particular video, but sometimes the content can be terrible, right? Yeah. And it can do amazingly well because it can have a really eye-catching, dare I say it, link-baity title or a brilliant thumbnail. Bang, click, and it can get amazing views. And it's slightly infuriating, isn't it, at times, because it paints the wrong picture.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll tell you one thing that I think is people doing things. Oh. Actually, no, that's a different thing. Sorry, have you got anything bad, or is that your version of bad?
Have we got anything bad? I mean, there are other football channels that have used big influencers. We were talking about it earlier. I'm not going to name any names. And they started out using a big name influencer for a number of months. Big name influencer does one. The football channel's left with not very much because they haven't built a brand. There is no substance to the football channel. It is just a face that they've tapped into that already has a big following. And of course, everyone's going to come over and watch it because he's flagging it on his channel. Yeah, I want to watch more of him. But then when he goes, there's nothing left. And that football channel has pretty much ceased to operate, as far as I can see.
One of the other aspects I wanted to bring up was the new phenomenon in terms of like the influencer teams. As well, which is in football, which kind of if you've got a Spencer FC or Sport FC or...
You're going to list some of mine, some of ours.
And Smiv obviously would have been great on this with the Palmers.
Smiv would have been great.
What do you make, and how can kind of brands, leagues, teams work with these people? What do you make of this whole thing? Because it's like taking these individuals and then bringing them all together and it's watching them play really rubbish football.
Well, look, I'll go first because it's a subject close to my heart. So, Brave Bison has a football proposition and we invest in football teams, creative football teams. So Rebel FC, Cal Freeze's team. Cal Freeze is quite a big creator in his own right. We've invested and we've co-formed a team with Cal Freeze called Rebel FC. They're already doing brand deals. We're about to announce a big top 3 sports brand sponsorship deal for that team, and it's in its infancy, the team.
Is that an easier sell to sell a team rather than an individual?
It's to sponsor the whole team, and it's a technical sponsorship as well as a content sponsorship. So they'll be all over every piece of content we make. They'll probably be all over the kit. And that shows you the power. And #United have been doing it for longer than anyone, right? They've been doing deals with the likes of PlayStation.
They've got Umbro as a kit sponsor.
Umbro, they've sort of proved the concept in a way, but there is such an appetite amongst these kind of social media audiences and younger audiences, such a big appetite for this kind of content, which is very, very different to top tier, glossy, slick, Premiership or whatever you want to call it, content. This is like super relatable, to your point. This is super accessible. They're watching, and the football might be mediocre at times, but you know what? They're not watching it for the skills necessarily. They're not watching it for that. They're watching it for the personalities involved because they follow them every day intimately. They follow them across all of their social platforms. They behave in a way that the audience absolutely loves. They see their fails. They see their successes. They are loved by millions. And a lot of these creators have much bigger followings than football clubs themselves. And so Rebel FC is one example. We've sponsored a team called Eltham that we still sponsor now. It does anything from 100 to 500,000 views per episode, and it's hugely loved, a big devoted audience. Brands can tap into that for obvious reasons. It's just a way of accessing a whole new audience in a completely raw and I guess kind of unfettered way, which is difficult to do with top tier top tier football.
But and I think that just to relate it to top tier football, that the whole of Premier League football and the broadcast experience in the UK, it's behind a veneer. You know, you have Jose Mourinho, you have players after the game coming out, and they can't be honest, because if they are honest, then they end up getting a fine from the FA. So you've even got presenters on there, and they're kind of very often sitting on the fence or not quite being honest, and they can't be honest. So if that's how the traditional media world is presenting the product of football, it's no wonder that people like that kids walk past the likes of Gareth Bale, and this has actually happened, and walk up to Spencer and want a selfie with him. And that's because Spencer's been speaking to that audience in a very different way than traditional media communicates. The camera angles don't matter, but it's face-to-face, it's very direct, and it's honest. And it's, I've had a good day, this has happened, I've had a bad day, this has happened. And that kind of consistent, truthful proximity, that pays off, and that's why people are following these teams. And it is a very interesting, because I'm a Huddersfield Town fan, and that's never going to change. I'm not all of a sudden going to start waving around a hashtag United scarf. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do that. But if you look at the kids, right, they are buying these kits. These kits are selling out. They are following, and they will turn up, you know, and you've seen that with the Sidemen game. Both of them, they did one at Southampton, then they did one at Charlton. You've seen that with hashtag United, the Wembley Cup as well. You know, kids are interested in this stuff. I remember once when you were talking about how you actually make a step change, right, in marketing or in communicating, and you go a generation below. So if it's like stopping cigarettes or HIV, you know, and you want to have a message with protection, you go younger than you need to be, because then that's how you create a step change. And actually, I think that in football, this is what's happening right now. There's a lot of people that care about KSA, care about the Sidemen, care about hashtag, care about Cal Freezy, they care about Arsenal Fan TV, they care about, because we've got football teams too, there's Palmer's FC, they care about these teams and they watch them and support them regularly. So them coming together and participating in a league, I think that's going to be a super interesting thing for the future. We actually did it earlier this summer. We created something called a Fan League Cup, which we got a partner to do, spending, you know, 6-figure fees to sponsor. 8 of these teams come together and participate in a tournament. And Ball Street, our team, lost in the final, sadly. But they lost this team called Creators FC, which is a bunch of YouTubers all coming together. Now, the views from that was massive. It's over like 10 million or something like that. And it shows you the audience that's there. And we did that in a few weeks' time, and not on a massive budget. So given how the rights for Premier League, etc., and how much cheaper it is to get into something like this, I think it's definitely something that's going to be a big thing in 3 to 5 years' time.
I think the other thing to mention, which is really important, is crossover of verticals, crossover of audiences. So, you know, I think it's very, very difficult for big clubs, for example, to talk legitimately about music, style, you know, gaming. It's very, very difficult. I mean, football clubs are starting to sign up gamers, right? Which is one way of doing it, right? One way of getting legitimate in that space. But these creators and their football teams, they can naturally, they're all ex-gamers, for example. They talk very naturally and legitimately about gaming. You know, they're into their style, they're into their design of the latest, you know, the latest kit and the latest boot. It's very difficult for top tier to kind of cross that and talk, you know, authentically about those other passion areas, which are all so important for getting that crossover.
Yeah. I know EE was talking about the sponsorship before. Has anyone heard of the Wembley Cup? If you're probably in here before or heard of it. No. I went last year to it, and I have never seen so many kids at a football game in my life.
That's incredible.
So I think there were 19,000 people in Wembley.
Yeah.
And probably 18,500 of them were probably under 18. And the others were just chaperones. And it was like being at a pop concert.
Yeah.
You know, a player would go towards a corner and the kids would be screaming. It was amazing. But at the same time, you're like, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mad. A way of getting kids
it's mad. I mean, to put it into context, I've been to Arsenal with Ian Wright who scored 185 goals for the club. So, fairly significant figure in Arsenal's history. And I've been there with Ian Wright and Robbie from Arsenal Fan TV at the same time. And I've seen kids walking past Wrighty and asking Robbie for a selfie. And Robbie's embarrassed because Robbie's probably a similar age to Wrighty. And Wrighty's not relatable to a YouTube audience. Robbie is. And Robbie's going, it's Ian Wright standing there, It's Ian Wright standing there. But the kid just wants Robbie's because he doesn't really know who Wrighty is.
Well, we invited John Barnes down to an Eltham FC game last season, and some of the kids didn't even know who he was.
Of course.
They're like, who is this guy? Well, he's come to help train you.
Yeah.
Oh, right. He's an excellent.
It's like the Wembley Cup thing as well, because it mixed in ex-pros as well.
Yeah.
And I guaranteed most of the kids have no idea who they are.
It's madness.
It is bonkers. But I mean, if you're a club or someone like that, and you're thinking these people have got the right audience, they've got the influence that we need to be talking to. How do they even start to kind of work with these people and with what?
How would a club work with?
Yeah, so a Rebel FC or someone like that, in terms of trying to bridge that audience.
Those worlds, we sit here talking quite negatively about top tier. It's not intended in the slightest. These two worlds can collide quite easily, right? So, for example, we're doing a format, a live stream this season where it's going to feature creator football teams, for example, but we can also invite down ex-pros to come, and ultimately they're all football fans. They all support clubs. They all love the game for similar reasons. They can come together. You can do training sessions with Rebel FC and Aston Villa. They can come together. They can
good
have
place
crossover.
to activate.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, you've seen that with hashtag. Going around and playing a bunch of teams.
So they played Man City's staff, didn't they?
Yeah.
They played Man City's staff.
There's a lot of that.
They even went and played a few MLS teams on a Coca-Cola tour in America. So it's good if the club or the sponsors got a vision where they've got assets with the real professional club to actually enable those influencers to take their audience on a journey they enjoy by allowing them to go and visit and play against a real life football club or have a training session with Pogba or whatever. So the brand can have a foot in both camps and ultimately probably drive that.
Media owners as well, so it's a BT Sport only a few weeks ago did a Frank Lampard, Steve Gerrard piece of content opportunity where they invited down, lots of our creators and these creator teams to actually interview these two players. There is a coming together, media owner, ex-pros, creator teams, all in the same room, making great content. There's no reason why they can't all, be successful from it.
Have we got any questions at this point? Does anyone want to throw their hand up? I think there's a microphone coming your way, sir.
Thank you, guys. Jeffrey Blossett from the Washington Redskins, from the other football across the pond. Thank you very much for this. And Matt, I agree with your point 100% on LinkedIn video earlier.
Oh, nice.
My question was in regards to social platforms. When you're doing your research and you want to pick, the proper influencer, you want to figure out the audience that you want to target, and so you look at each platform. Have you noticed a trend maybe with a specific, one specific platform over another in terms of say a success rate, where you could say on this social platform we've had X success rate across multiple, team clubs, brands, whatever the case may be, that they're achieving their goals versus, Y platform seeing Y success rate, which is less.
I'm sure we've both got answers on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Good luck to the Redskins this year, by the way. I'm a massive Raiders fan, so hopefully we'll see you in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I think the variable for success isn't the platform. It's not. It's how you execute within that, because each platform is nuanced in terms of how things get seen. Like Will was saying earlier about thumbnails. There's a way to do it. There's a knack to do it well on each platform. So the variable isn't which platform, it's the execution, and it's more about things like understanding the state of mind of the audience on that, understanding the language and the way that things are done on that platform, and then it's about being consistent.
When it comes to influencers, there is a very, very real and obvious difference between YouTube and Facebook, for example. YouTube, an influencer can propel your piece of content no end. You know, it's completely different to Facebook. Whereas Facebook, you can put a big creator influencer on there, and the content can absolutely tank. I think Facebook is definitely about the idea and how visceral the content is, and it could be something as ridiculous as just a ludicrous fail of, you know, like a grassroots fail of someone having a terrible shot on goal, and it can do amazing if it's in front of the right audience. Having a creator there sometimes won't make any difference, whereas on YouTube, creators, that is the creator world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Makes such a difference.
And again, I mean, YouTube's different. You tend to go into YouTube and you end up sort of in a destination where this video is waiting to play and you're going to watch it. Facebook's a lot more transient. So actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to capture people's attention in that first few, like, almost, in fact, before the video even plays, it's got to be done in a way that as your thumb's scrolling vertically through it, that makes you kind of stop. And there's a few sort of tricks to that. But yeah, it depends on how you execute within the rules of the platform.
Oh, we've got one at the back and then one at the front.
Hi guys, Chris Lewis, the chairman of Biggleswade United. Just a quick question regarding the regularity at which you put out content for influencer marketing. If you're working with someone as a creator, do you have a rough idea or a specific number that you would say that content needs to go out a certain amount of times per week, per month? Is there a cliff face at which if you don't put out content by a certain amount, then it drops off and you lose that engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the ideal, I mean, a lot of it boils down to resource, right? You know, there's sometimes only so much you can. I'd love to post a different video about each creator every single day, but it's almost impossible for us. I think regularity is important, so putting out, particularly on YouTube, this is specific for putting out an episode of a content series on a weekly basis, or doing it 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and making that common knowledge and keeping that consistent, absolutely is the way. So last season, the example I spoke about earlier, which is the Park Life strand on /football, that was a regular Sunday episode every single Sunday. And the audience were there waiting for that to be released, and more often than not got annoyed if it wasn't released. So yeah, I think regularity is important, and posting as often as possible, frankly, is important. I mean, you know, certainly when it comes to Facebook, you know,
that's very platform specific.
The more you post, the better, frankly, as long as the content's good, you know. But it's more important to keep up the regular, smaller bits of content. So yeah, in answer to your question, it is important.
I think it's worth adding to that as well, just to say that one of the big mistakes that people make, and especially when it's big brands or big organizations, that there's a tendency for us to try and create this perfect piece of content. I do it myself, whereby you say, oh, we'll just do that tweak, we'll just do that edit. However, that sort of stalling, that waiting, that extra day it takes you then to get things turned around and up, a lot of times you miss the opportunity. So I think that perfect never comes, you know. You've got to just, it's better to get it up and out than not. And I think that you can, we used to be in a world where you would wait and almost then the curtain would be unveiled. This is the new show, or this is the movie, check it out. It's perfect. This is the advert. But actually, we're in a world now where you're best just getting it done and being consistent. And that's, again, understanding the platforms, because if you were making content about your club and your journey that you're doing, I think that you could have some nice polished stuff. But what would be more interesting is for you to just be talking into your phone, not even caring about the camera angles and how it looked, because your audience is small. You just want people to see the journey you're going through. And telling that story is about creating a lot of content rather than less content that looks shinier.
The subject matter is king, isn't it? It's more important than the way it's executed, and that for me is incredibly frustrating. You know, I'm a creative. You know, I was a designer originally. You know, it sometimes kills me to think that can we not put a perfect grade on that? Can we not just put some great supers on that? It's just, sometimes actually it doesn't matter.
But on social media, people don't care. People will watch. Like I was at an esports panel the other week, and they were showing us some streams on Twitch, and then you could see how Sky's coverage of one of the big tournaments, and the Sky stuff looked like a TV presentation. It looked like telethon appeal or one of those things, right? TV that we've seen a billion times before. The Twitch thing, you've just got this kid from a weird angle in the corner, but people are watching it because it's about the time and it's about the moment and it's about the relatable character rather than how polished it looks.
Yeah. We've got one more question.
Hi there, Jim Law from Find a Player. So, do you think there's a point at which influencer marketing and each point becomes less effective? So, we're speaking to the guys at Hashtag and looking at doing some stuff with them, but our product's kind of aimed at sort of 22 to 35, and we felt as if their audience was probably far too young for us. So is there a point where influencer marketing really, as an age, it becomes less effective?
Look, I think that some of the things that we spoke about today, so if an influencer's getting overexposed and doing too many call to actions for too many different brands, then the potency of that call to action will probably start to fade away. But influencer marketing is going to be here. It's real, and there's going to be more people that get discovered as people come of age, and more people start to make that decision to, I'm going to start making video. I'm going to start talking about Huddersfield
There are YouTube
Town.
universities now.
Is that right?
You can go and study a course
Yeah.
in becoming a YouTube creator, which is nuts, right?
I think
that's-
But for sure, you need to get someone where, if that's your audience, where you're speaking to the right audience. So it's not just the influencer or Hashtag because they're a really good influencer. You need to find the right context, and that right context is an audience that you've identified.
I mean, it's what we do. Brave Bison does a hell of a lot of for our brands and our partners. They come to us with a brief. They want us to find them a creator that hits the sweet spot, their particular audience, and there's always someone. There is always someone that can hit the spot of your particular audience. It might not be Hashtag. It might be a team that has a slightly older audience.
And you might get the likes of like Robbie. Robbie's not young, and I imagine his audience is probably a bit older because it's football fans who want to.
It is. A lot of our channels are actually older, and because it's the context as well. Look, people look at the data, I think, sometimes a bit too much, because what I mean by that is, I remember when I was a kid, I'm born in a place called Wakefield in Yorkshire, and underage drinking is the aim when you're about 14, right? So I had a fake ID like all my friends did, and we were trying to get booze on a Friday. It's just what we did. Now, if I could get a fake ID and forge that in those days, then how easy is it to put into YouTube you're a fake age? Now, and also let's look at actual what's happening, because whenever I go and sit down in a restaurant, I'm seeing people handing their kids their iPads. Now, I know a guy who runs a Minecraft channel, and his YouTube analytics tell him that his audience is 65% over the age of 40. Now, I'm sorry, but parents aren't sitting there trying to find out these Minecraft hacks. They're not. It's their kids, right? So you've got to think about and understand the context. So if it's grown-up football conversation, the audience is going to be a little bit grown-up. If it's FIFA gaming and stuff like that, it's a younger thing, because no guy that's 30, 40 years old is sitting there spending all day watching FIFA videos, because you've got kids, you've got a job, you've got responsibilities, So you've got to, as much as what you get from that, it's the art of it as well, and you've got to understand the principles of the context.
I mean, there are ways of, just a small point to add, of distributing the content to a wider audience. It's obviously, with a creator, you need the baked-in audience for distribution, but you can always either pay or do, share for share arrangements where you get the content distributed to a slightly different audience, which is what we did last season on lots of content. We found partners that could share our content, and we could share their content likewise, in order to hit a specific demographic.
Yeah.
And is it still true, Kate? Would you still recommend, because when I was doing it a couple of years ago, it'd be, say if you're a brand or a club or something like that, is doing that like for like, but putting videos on different audiences. So you do one that, say if you've got a series, you might put some on the brand channel and some on the host channel and link them together. So you're kind of getting that cross-audience.
Absolutely. I mean, it's what we always. It's kind of the ideal situation, I guess. If you create a piece of branded content with a creator, you would create sort of partner videos, if you like, the branded version. So we're talking to the sports brand for Rebel FC, for example. The deal will be a video appears on Rebel FC's channel, which is much more raw and much more their style, you know, much more probably shaky camera, lower production values.
Yeah.
Over on the brand's channel, much more polished, much more slick, much more brand friendly, because it's for a different audience.
Yeah.
But they will link to each other and cross promote.
That's what impressed me with the Wembley Cup, in the fact that you've got this big brand sticking loads of money in, and it was all hosted on Spencer's channel.
Yeah.
Which, you know, he went from 500,000 to 1 million pretty quickly in terms of subscribers, got huge views. But EE are taking it, saying, we're going to take that. We're happy with that arrangement. We want you to take
But that's the decision.
That's the association rather than trying to build
Yeah,
it.
because what every brand needs really is independent third-party advocacy. They do. Now, you still see it. I saw some Virgin Media stuff the other day where they've created content and they're putting it on their channels, and then they're promoting that on Facebook, on Twitter. And you look through the comments on there, and everyone's saying, stop chatting about that. My broadband shit. That's what they're saying. Stop, and a lot ruder than that as well. I don't care about this thing. Where's my song? And that's because, right, people don't really want to hear Virgin just chatting about the football. What's going to work better for Virgin is people that are known for talking about football saying, God, I use Virgin because it's the best operating system, it's the best package of football. So we were in a world where you'd buy a billboard, you'd buy a TV spot, and you'd tell everyone that German engineering, where it mattered most on a card, you'd tell them that you were the fastest at this or the best at that. But we're not now. We're in a world where everyone's got a say, and social media allows these opinions to kind of to pick up pace and to gather around ideas. And ultimately, you are what other people say that you are. So independent third-party advocacy is a smarter way to go than just trying to put it on your channel and then force people to watch it.
But it's a mix, isn't it? You know, I still stand by that for any brand. You know, there are so many options now. You know, TV isn't dead.
Yeah.
For example, TV advertising isn't dead. You know, used appropriately, it can be bloody brilliant for a brand. But it's just it's one executional lever that you can pull. Influencer marketing is another executional lever that you can pull on.
On that note, we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much, Will. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening.